Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel. Portal madness in full effect for Texas in the spring portal window. Let's recap it here, CJ. A lot of movement. Malik Ogbo and Bert Auburn on their way out, and pretty much every need that Texas had going into the portal cycle between Emmett Mosley, Jack Endress, Mason Shipley, and LaVon Johnson. The needs have been met. CJ, you've been keeping track of this. As of right now, where's Texas at scholarship-wise?
Yeah, 83 scholarships. So still room to move, still room to make some additions if Texas sees fit. Of course, they're very precise, Jeff, when it comes to the portal. We've seen that time and time again this year, no exception. Yesterday was pretty fun, right? 3 commitments in the matter of about an hour, all of which very targeted, very precise, and Texas acting very quickly to get all 3 in the fold.
The kicking situation is the one that fascinates me the most because we talked to Sark earlier in the week, and he spoke glowingly about Jack Bomeister and the job he's done punting this spring. And he had really positive things to say, CJ, about pretty much every position on this team. But when it came to kicker, and you asked him the kicker question, he just said, well, I don't think we've seen enough, and we need to start ramping it up. And about the time they started ramping it up is about the time Bert Auburn entered the portal. So it almost seems like Sark came into spring with a kicking competition and said, it's time to name a winner between Bert Auburn and Will Stone. And the winner is neither of you. We're going to the portal to get a kicker. I've said it before. I'll say it again, CJ. I think Sark just does not want to go through a year like he went through last year where you get into critical games and you don't trust your field goal kicker until you get to a certain point on the field. You feel like you have to score touchdowns. No way he wants to deal with that again.
Yeah, I have to agree that was the case. And again, I think Texas fans would agree, it's like, hey, I don't want to go through that again. And I understand, right? But it is tough to see a third year going on a fourth year kicker, one of your all-time leading scorers in program history hit the door. But I think it was best for both parties, right? For Bert Auburn to get a fresh start elsewhere, for Texas to kind of say, hey, we got to move on, right? We can't have this lingering kind of cloud over our head of what happened a year ago. And, that first missed kick in 2025, what does that mean moving forward? I think it's great for both parties to move on. For Bert to be able to finish up his Texas career with obviously a Texas degree, good for him. That's tremendous. It's why you come to college, right? But for Sark, it was pretty interesting, Jeff, because going back to that comment, going back to what I asked him on Tuesday is, with our kicking situation, I want to ramp it up. I want to see what more we can get out of the 2. That's Will Stone and that's Bert Auburn. Obviously, Auburn has since hit the portal. I don't think Texas wanted to go the Will Stone route in 2025, right? I think Texas wanted to get a guy that's been out there, that's been there, that's done that, and a guy who's had experience, a guy that's made big kicks. And with Mason Shipley, 30 of 34, career long of 60 yards, hey, that's making big kicks. So I think Texas found a guy that they believe is going to be a benefit, a guy that's going to be a plus in the kicking game in 2025 out of the portal this weekend.
Yeah, like you said, 15 for 15 in 2023. He was a Groza Award semifinalist, and there may allegedly be one of the 2 members on this video right now who has a Groza Award vote, who may have voted Mason Shipley probably higher than anybody else did on the Groza Award ballot. I can't confirm or deny that, CJ. But regardless, you've brought up this is the let's give CJ his flowers episode of On Texas Football, because you brought up something and Rod's taking it and run with it. And you know what? I'm going to as well. We've seen this staff go the high school route for a kicker and a punter with Will Stone and then with Michael Kern as punter. And punter was an immediate need in the winter window. They've addressed kicker. I'm of the opinion now, CJ, unless you think you've got, Mason Crosby or just, Justin Tucker, just a flat out stud kicker coming in, I don't know that you should use a scholarship on a high school kicker. Just go grab one from the portal. Go grab a punter from the portal and just do it that way. We've seen teams kind of earmark positions, so to speak, in the portal. Like, hey, we're fine going to the portal for a running back or a wide receiver or whatever. Maybe Sark and Jeff Banks should just get their heads wrapped around, hey, you know what? We can continue to recruit high school guys. If something's there, great, but let's keep our powder dry, make sure we go into the portal and get one if we really need one.
Yeah, I mean, I like this approach. Look, you got an all-conference guy in the Big 12 with Jack Bomeister at punter, and you got a guy that's 30 of 34 out of Texas State now as your kicker with Mason Shipley. I'm a big fan. And it's not to say to completely disregard high school recruiting, right? Especially at the punting and kicking situation. Hey, maybe you find a Michael Dixon, right? Maybe you find a Justin Tucker. And that's great, right? You could find a Cameron Dicker and end up with a 3 or 4 year really solid option in the specialist department. But point being, odds are it's a tough thing, right? You know, it is hard to find a guy that's going to come out and give you 4 good years. I'd rather just go every 2 years, go to the portal, find a guy from the MAC, Sun Belt, Big 12, whatever it might be, anywhere else, and say, hey, you're our guy for 2 years. Come in, kick the ball far, kick the ball accurately, and you're going to the NFL. Hey, just like it would be at any other position, Texas can help you get to the NFL. We've seen that at the kicking spot. We've seen that now with the punting situation. I'm all for it. The Ryan Sanborns of the world, now the Mason Shipleys and Jack Bowmeisters, sign me up all the way.
Let's go to tight end, and I think everybody should feel better about the depth and the talent at that position, adding a guy like Jack Andrews from Cal. The numbers speak for themselves, CJ. He was an extremely productive tight end in that offense, and he was the guy Texas targeted, the guy they wanted. They got it wrapped up the first weekend the portal's open. How much better do you feel about tight end? Because now I feel like, all right, you don't need to put all your eggs in the Jordan Washington basket. You can let him develop. You can bring Nick Townsend along at a nice, steady clip. If he's ready to contribute right away, then so be it, but you don't have to force him to play. I love this move for Texas going out and getting the top tight end in the portal.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And again, tight end was the biggest need for me going into the portal window. Just not having anybody that's done it before. And I know I sound like a broken record, but getting a guy who's run routes, who's had big catches, who's played in big games. I know you're sitting there saying, Cal playing in big games. I understand. Point being, you know, it's a proven commodity, something that Texas didn't have at the tight end position, and quite frankly, doesn't have a whole lot of on its offense outside of a Ryan Wingo and a DeAndre Moore. So I think it's a great move. And for Texas, how does that tight end room keep evolving? Is the next step just a Jordan Washington moving forward, moving that needle? Is it a Spencer Shannon? Does Texas continue to look at other options in the tight end portal window? We'll wait and see. But right now, I love the way that room is shaping up. And, of course, moving into 2025, that position is going to play a huge role into whether or not Texas is successful on the field.
Yeah, I just go back to the fact that Texas targeted Andrus. You know, there were a couple tight ends available in this winter window. You know, they kicked the tires on Max Clare from Purdue, CJ, in the winter window, I should say. We're talking about the spring window, but they kicked the tires on Max Clare, decided to go another direction. But there was a couple tight ends available this time around. Jack Andrews was the guy that they honed in on. They got him, and again, feeling much better about that tight end room. CJ, that pretty much, in theory, on the surface, is going to do it for offense. Would you like to see Texas just be done now? Like you mentioned, they got 2 scholarships left, depending on if there's any more portal attrition. Would you like to see them just go best available player or just focus on defense with the last 2 remaining scholarships?
I like best available player, right? And I got that draft mindset where, you know, needs, you know, obviously you got to address them, right? That's what offseason's for. Portal certainly fits that. But if you're looking at a guy who can come in and give you 600-700 yards on the offensive side of the ball, I'm all the way in. And again, I don't think the offensive line needs any touching, but Texas still needs a returner. I'm not sure who that man's going to be. And if you could find a return man with some offensive capability, whether it be all-purpose, whether it be receiving or rushing, I'm in. Sign me up, because I don't know what that return game will look like next year, Jeff.
Yeah, I would love for Texas to find a guy specifically with punt return experience. I think you've got enough guys on your roster that you can find a kick returner. But DeAndre Moore is the only guy really that's got any experience, and I use that term loosely, to speak of working as a punt returner. So, yeah, you'd like to go out and get one. Interesting note, though, CJ, after the baseball game Friday where he made his starting debut, Jonah Williams said he wants a crack at returning punts and kickoffs in the fall once he gets in camp. So, hey, look, at the way he handles the bat and handles himself in the outfield is any indication, sign me up for some Jonah Williams getting a chance to return kicks and punts. But I digress. Let's actually go to that side of the ball Jonah Williams plays. We knew interior D-line was a need. They go out and get LaVon Johnson from Maryland, commits to North Carolina, but pretty astutely noted by Bobby Burton on Friday morning, he may have committed to North Carolina, but he didn't sign with North Carolina. And by the end of the day, he's a Longhorn. CJ, it can be debated. Was this the disruptor Texas needed? Again, I don't know if they were looking for disruptor, a guy to play over the ball. I think Kenny Baker was looking for, hey, this guy can come play for us. We need numbers at the position. Let's go get him.
Yeah, that's exactly where I see fit, right? You know, a disruptor, especially in the run game. And I think that's what Texas is trying to add. You know that the edges, you know that the linebackers are going to get home in the pass rushing game. Hey, as long as the run game doesn't look like what Clemson put on the field last in the college football playoff against Texas, they're going to have a good defense, right? And I think that was the big concern going into the spring. It actually sounds like this Texas front seven is doing very well in the run game. But if you can add a piece that can play multiple spots, over the nose, in the B gap, over tackle, that's what LaVon Johnson does. It never hurts, Jeff, to have a guy who's played, 300, 400 snaps in a Power 4, conference on the defensive line. For Texas to add its fourth in that position, it just, I guess, solidifies what my hope was for the room and for LaVon Johnson specifically. How can he continue to elevate his game? Overall, good ad. I'm a fan.
I just like the fact that to the 4 portal defensive tackles you've taken, Cole Brevard, Travis Shaw, Harold Canoe, and now LaVon Johnson, 3 guys from the Big Ten, 1 guy from the ACC. All guys have power conference experience. So it's a nice way to bridge the gap between what Texas needs now and Kenny Baker developing an Alex January, a Myron Charles, a Josiah Sharma, trying to get those younger guys ready to play. If they're good enough, CJ, you can get them snaps, but it's kind of like tight end. You don't need to force them onto the field because you've got a veteran buffer right there.
Yeah. And on top of that, Jeff, I tweeted out the weights of these guys. Texas has a ton of size. And I know that was kind of always the concern. Hey, will you have the SEC level size? For the last 2 years, Texas has. Last year specifically with Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, Bill Norton, Jermaine Lele, Texas did. And I think they will again in 2025. Look, some of these weights are kind of ridiculous. And I'm not sure I completely believe them. Let me throw that out there. But Travis Shaw, 350. Cole Brevard, 352. All right, that works, right? Alex January, 320. But then you start moving down the line. LaVon Johnson, 312. Hero Canoe, 309. Anywhere north of 300 pounds, Jeff, sign me up. And, of course, you got the freshmen that are going to find the field at some point this fall. At what level, I don't know. But a Josiah Sharma, 362, that's just outrageous. Myron Charles, 327. And, of course, Justice Terry, he'll add and continue to get his frame right. But seeing him on the edge, seeing him in the middle at 265, 270 pounds, Texas is going to be just fine in terms of size going into 2025.
My question now is, have we misjudged this defense from this standpoint? Have we focused too much on Texas needing a disruptor on the interior and neglecting the fact that between the bodies you've got at edge, now Trey Moore can line up at edge or off the ball, and with Anthony Hill and Brad Spence at your second level and on your edges, you've got so much pass rush that maybe you don't need to get it. In other words, getting it from the interior would be a bonus. It's not a prerequisite for this defense to function properly. I just want to throw that out there as a possibility.
Yeah, I like it. Anything you find from your interior pass rush, found money, right? We know that pass rush on the edges. We know that Anthony Hill, Brad Spence, you can throw Trey Moore into the mix in that linebacker room as well. They're going to create havoc. They're going to be a tough handful to defend. Anything I can get out of a LaVon Johnson or Travis Shaw or Cole Brevard or an Alex January up front, it's found money. Because right now, I'm kind of with you. I'm not expecting big sack numbers. You never really do out of those interior unless you have like a Byron Murphy true freak. I look at this front seven holistically and just say that's going to be a lot to defend.
Yeah, no doubt. CJ, let's take Mason Shipley out of the equation because I think your portal kicker needs to be an impact guy. There's no question about that. But of the other guys Texas has added in the portal in the spring window, so we're talking about, we'll throw Emmett Mosley in there, LaVon Johnson, Jack Andrus. Which one do you think needs to have the biggest impact on the 2025 season for Texas to maximize their ceiling?
That's a good question. I'll go Jack Andrus. I think that's the spot again. You looked at what Jatavian Sanders has done for 2 years at Texas. You look at what Gunnar Helm did last year, and we know that this offense is going to be more vertically, attacking in 2025 with Arch Manning. But that tight end spot, it has to be a plus. And right now, I think the addition of injuries puts that position in a spot to be a plus. I don't think it was before. And it certainly wasn't a proven spot before. We'll see what Jordan Washington looks like when he comes back, because I do think the 12 personnel with a Washington with an injury, all right, that's enticing now. Sign me all the way up. And then, of course, you could throw Nick Townsend into that mix as well. All in all, to get a proven commodity, one of the top returning tight ends in the country, yeah, I love it.
When we look at the portal, CJ, and when it closes, we look at the rest of this roster. Where do you think Texas cannot afford to have attrition? Because I think at this point, you look at the offensive line and you look in the secondary, I think those two groups are maybe ripe for some attrition if anybody's going to leave. For me, I think as long as it's not in the running back room or at wide receiver, I think Texas is going to be fine. I like the makeup of this roster.
Yeah, running back's an interesting spot. I'm not expecting attrition. Wide receiver, of course, still a little thin, right? We're seeing it now. The addition of Emmett Mosley certainly helps, right? Don't get me wrong. You've got 3 guys that have been out there and done it before with Wingo, Moore, and now Mosley, but it's still thin, right? One guy goes down, all right, now you're relying on a guy very much like the spring who just hasn't done it, right? They don't have a career reception outside of those 2 and now Mosley. So that could be a spot that maybe it's pretty thin. I look across on that defense and say, hey, you know what? Attrition wouldn't surprise me. They're deep. They're stacked. There's a lot of talent on every single position. And now with the defensive line looking in the way that it is, and you can get these young guys, into the strength and conditioning program for a full year before being thrust on the field, that's a huge bonus for me.
Yeah. If you're a guy in the 2022 or 2023 class still on the roster, and you find yourself buried behind a guy that was in the 2024, 2025 class, if they've passed you, that might be – the coaches don't need to say anything. That's probably going to be the best indicator that if I want to play, it might not be at Texas, and I might need to move on. So that's the attrition I would keep an eye out for. CJ, real quick as we wrap this up, one of the questions we get asked in our live streams all the time, it seems like the position that pops up had corner. And I was one of these people on board before spring ball saying, hey, you can go get a corner if you don't think your young guys are ready. But based on what we've heard about Warren Roberson and Kobe Black and Grayson Littleton and Cade Phillips, CJ, I don't think they need to go corner. I think in terms of the secondary, they may lose a piece or two, like you said, because they're just loaded and guys might see, hey, I want an opportunity to play right now, and it's not going to be at Texas, so let me go into the portal and try my hand. I don't think they need to add a corner or a safety, especially with Derek Williams coming back. Yeah,
I like the secondary a lot. I do, and I'm with you. I don't think portal for a cornerback makes sense right now. You've heard 6 names this spring that are making noise, right? Of course, we know Manny Muhammad, Jalen Gilbo, now Kobe Black, Warren Roberson, Santana Wilson. I mean, throw 5-star Cade Phillips into the mix. You got really, really talented bodies in that room at the moment. Are they going to be Jahdae Barron? Probably not, right? That's a veteran guy who's been around. Obviously won the Thorpe a year ago. I'm not expecting Texas to be able to throw out, a duplicate of the Thorpe winner from last year. That's unrealistic. But point being, you got enough bodies to find a guy that can make hay, right? Absolutely. I think Texas is going to be just fine at the cornerback room. I think when that room gets fully healthy and on the field, of course, when Jonah Williams moves over to football for the fall, I think we're going to be looking at that safety room saying, oh, okay, this is going to be a strength too.
Yeah, and the good thing about those guys in the secondary, a lot of those guys are going to make up your return units, your coverage units. No reason why Texas shouldn't be one of the best special teams units in the country this year, especially now, hopefully, fingers crossed, CJ, that you've got your punting situation and your kicking situation. You've got those figured out because they can't be what they were last year, which were detriments to helping you win games. Hopefully now with Bowmeister and Shipley, now you've got that figured out and you can go compete for an SEC championship, get back to the CFP, and maybe get over that semifinal hump and get to a national championship game. All right, we'll be tracking it here on the channel. Also be tracking it at ontexasfootball.com, where if you go to ontexasfootball.com and you're not a member, sign up right now using the promo code OTFOG. That's OTFOG. We'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $49.95 right now. Even though spring practice is winding down and those unofficial visits are winding down, when June official visits get here, CJ, they're not going to want to miss our up-to-the-minute information. with you and Jerry Hamilton, the entire team over there doing everything on the recruiting front, market leading coverage and recruiting. And then after that, SEC Media Days and camp will be here before you know it. So go ahead. Should be a great year for the Longhorns. We're counting on it. Go ahead and sign up at ontexasfootball.com right now. Want to thank everybody Matthew behind the scenes, everybody on the ontexasfootball.com staff for everything they do. Everybody enjoy your Easter weekend, and we will see you next week with more On Texas Football content. For CJ Vogel, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you for watching, and until next time, hook 'em.
Hook 'em.